Record.
Okay. Okay, so okay, it started working. Let me
Okay.
just
Yeah, we are just going to talk a little bit
let's
about.
start. Yes, let's
Yeah,
start.
yeah.
And then
Thank you. So thank you everyone, and good morning or good afternoon or good evening if you're joining from Sri Lanka. So thank you so much for joining us. And we are SADEA, South Asian Design Educators Alliance. And then there are several board members here as well. Amrita is the vice chair. Nipuni is our treasurer, and I'm the chair for the alliance. And what we call this session is Chat Masala. Chat Masala is a biennial conversation series run by Sadeya, occurring in the months of March and also October. Chaat masala is an omnipresent household spice mix that creates an explosion of flavors ranging from salty, spicy, and sour. Its generous sprinkles on chaat, aka roadside food, leaves a funky yet heated feeling at the tip of our tongue. Irrespective of age groups, South Asians love to share a chat in the evening with friends and families that foster meaningful relationships over a gastronomical delicacy. To memorialize, can't even pronounce anymore, our love for chaat and chaat masala, Sadeya created a guest lecture series. Chaat Masala is a space to honor the people of South Asian diaspora around the globe, to share their varied design practices, their processes, their journeys, and their favorite snack. So here we have Pathum, and then I have the pleasure of introducing Pathum, but the introduction is going to happen from Nipuni. So thank you so much, Nipuni, and please go ahead and introduce Pathum. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nipuni, and thank you, Archana, for the intro earlier. So, Pathum is a very good friend and colleague of mine. I'll start with that. And so, Pathum Egodawatta is a Sri Lankan type designer, researcher, and educator, specializing in Sinhala, Tamil, and other South Indian scripts. He received his MA in typeface design from the University of Reading with a distinction in 2016 and a BA in graphic design from the Academy of Design in Colombo, Sri Lanka in 2013. So Pathum has been running his own design studio for a while now. I know that. And he has worked with companies such as Google, Uber, Toyota. But his real passion lies in contributing to leading open source font development software in UX, interface, and documentation of that. He also conducts workshops and develops curricula for typography, type design, and visual communication design for schools and professionals. And I'd also like to add that he has pioneered a typography and font design based community called Akuru Collective in Sri Lanka that has been going strong for a long time now. So I'll let him speak more about all these amazing things that he's doing. So Pathum, it's over to you. Thanks. Thank you for joining us.
thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to share my screen and start here. Uh, so we couldn't figure out how to. I couldn't figure out how to do this with speaker notes in Keynote. So this is my first time. Like I was on Libre Office Impress for a long while, but because of I changed the computer, so I'm now on today on Keynote. The first thing, we have an hour, and I'm just going to tell you guys a few stories from some of my experiences. And when I was talking to Nipuni about this, and when Nipuni was telling me about Sade, I was like, yes, this should be, it's about time that something like this is happening. Something like Sade is happening, because my it's about time. So today, actually last year, like 23 was sort of it. This is, it's been 10 years since I graduated from design school in Colombo, and I've been as a like sort of 10 years, a decade of adulthood in design, and I thought it's nice to capture some things. And I when I was developing the talk and what to share, I felt a bit stuck by my original pitch and the title for the talk, but it's here. So this is what you came here expecting, but I'm just going to share some notes and ideas and things. So a bit about me. Right now, my title is type like a sort of my living. I make a living with designing fonts and doing font engineering. There's a lot of research work going on. Community development is a key part of my work, and some video work. I'm not going to talk about that bit. And from my childhood and the times of the school time, I had fonts and letter forms have been object of interest for me. And these are just some early work uh, done in CorelDRAW, and I guess some of you might remember CorelDRAW is a kind of an archaic tool that was heavily used. It's in especially in like Sri Lanka and even Indian region, for even to typeset big books. Until recently, CorelDRAW was a tool, and the other main interest I had, even from like high school level, I think, like from age of 15, 16, I had interest in letter forms as objects of identity and conflict, uh, because of this particular book. Was the You might have heard about Sri Lanka's history of violence. I almost would say 88, 89 riots, then the 30 years of war. And this book by Sham Selvadore was very interesting and shocking to me, because even in our curriculum, we are not taught about the experience. I am from the majority Sinhalese ethnicity, and we are not told and taught about uh, what caused the conflict in our country. So this book was the first book kind of opened me to what this experience was for the other person. And there is the book is based around the time of the experience of a young boy of 12, I think 12, 13 years old boy. There was a movie made as well from this. Maybe you have seen Deepa Mehta made a movie from this book. um, during the 83 Tamil riots against the Tamil. You guys can read up about that. But this book had a lasting effect on me, and it made me study and do more things, even at school, relating to different languages and how they interact. This is a magazine called Kirula, and I remember, now just, looking back, I had this interest about doing things in all three languages, and I started reading up more and more about uh, why these tools are what the role of language. So these are some spreads from a magazine that we did in school. This is not my drawings. I was sort of art director and editor of this, but this was very interesting one, because we had a story about a Tamil and a Sinhala person in during the 83 riots, and whatever the Tamil dialogues were just in Tamil, and Sinhala dialogues were just in Sinhala. And we had a lot of peers coming and asking, how am I supposed to read this? Just go find a Tamil person and ask him to translate. So that this is one of the first times that I think this idea of language and conflict. Yeah. So then BA in graphic design at Academy of Design in Colombo. So Academy of Design is the leading private design school in Colombo, and they are accredited by the Northumbria University UK. I think still they are accredited by the Northumbria University in the UK. So I enrolled there in 2010, just after after my A levels. And there also I continued my work as a, like undergraduate design, but this was the first time that I was exposed to formal design education. And this is a image uh, uh, from my final year project at Academy of Design. I had a series of projects. I had serious interest in uh, uh, publishing projects. I think I somehow found a way to. I don't know whether you have experience with students like this. I somehow found a way to uh, uh, interpret the brief in the weirdest way and just to stand out in the class, not just because of that, but like, so even in packaging, we had this packaging module. I would somehow turn it into a book project, just playing within the brief. And in every semester I would have just one star project, and other projects would be done and dusted. Okay. And I was never, I think I shouldn't say this, but I've never been confident about my drawing, or that sort of thing. So and I was a research heavy producer. There was actually one module where submitted like a whole of a big research book, and my brief was to make the whole book like manually, and I just had like 2 pages done because I was spending all the time on the research. But I didn't fail that because research was somehow that strong. But this project was my final year major design project. And uh, the project basically brief was to build a combined a hybrid of Sinhala and Tamil alphabets. Um, so this is this project sort of you know received like 98 marks, and it landed me the position of the valedictorian, because it was this novel project, and I executed a lot of things, but also because of the context at that time, 2013. So after 3 years, when I graduated in the final year, 2013 was the 30 years sort of commemoration of the Black July, and 2009 was when the Sri Lankan war had ended. There was a lot of anti-Muslim things were starting in the country, because um, we had lost our 30 years of the common enemy of the Sinhala majority, the Tamil people, and the Tamil tigers were defeated, and the as the mass narrative, there had to be a new common enemy, and that was the Muslim minority. So because of that and all these things, it was well timed, and also it's a nice project. It was well executed, uh, and this. I'm not going into details of this project, but I can share a slide, a presentation which I did about this. If any of you are interested, I can talk about this later. So, uh, but uh, but I always had this problem in the design school as well. The limitations of design education, what is expected of the brief, and what we are supposed to do, because our curriculum was coming from Northumbria University, and we had our faculty was fabulous. Alain Parizu uh, was our faculty. He's a Canadian designer, typographer, type designer. He had vested interest in understanding the Sri Lankan culture, and pushing students towards looking at native design, looking at what's happening around the country here. But the curriculum had its limitations as well. Um, uh, then my first font and how I found Libre culture. I don't know whether you're familiar with Sita Singh's blues, fabulous Nina Pele's work. Nina Pele is the was the Alain actually showed us this work by Nina Pele, and it was the first time that I actually heard about Libre culture, and here and there you might hear about Creative Commons. Back then, this is I'm talking about 2010, 2011. Creative Commons and licensing issues were not necessarily this commonly understood as well. But Nina Pele has this fabulous TED talk called "Copyright is Brain Damage." One of my favorite talks ever, and it made some sense. Uh, that was my first time sort of hearing about Libre culture. But so my first font. So I designed these letter forms. I was making these letters, but I was determined to become like score the best marks in the class. I suppose I wanted to I was not required to do a font, but I wanted to do a font. Like I just wanted to because it didn't make sense to have these just these letter forms for a being educators, for a final major project. You need to show your amount of work in a way. Once you figure out the basics of these letters, you can't actually score the hours per se. So as a undergraduate design student and someone who even though had interest in letter forms, I was more of a researcher. I was actually thinking of when I was hitting the final year with my interest in research, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to study anthropology or like sociology or something. That is where I wanted to go, because in Sri Lanka, at least back then, 2012, 2013, with a design degree, you just go into advertising and design pizza boxes and packaging for FMCGs. That was the only uh, available option that we had. 2011 was when I think iPhone was introduced. Yeah. Anyway, like even the apps and all these things had need not hit the Sri Lanka. So uh, I was thinking I'm this researcher and pen tool nightmare. I think yes, like you also have students and people who think pen tool is a nightmare and Bezier curve is just Bezier curves are just I don't know what to do with this. What is this situation? So we know the Bezier curve uh, problem, and trying to uh, make something nice. So I was looking around. I was looking around, researching whether there should be something easier. There should be something better than this. And actually, just going around, I found something. So you can see on the left. Right now, if you go to Illustrator, I think after so many years, they have introduced some tool called curvature, right? So I'm talking about this is 2011, and I found this tool uh, in a tool called Inkscape, and this is actually the splash screen of the tool. This is this free and open source vector software, meant to be meant to replace Illustrator uh, in Illustrator. Like you can use it as a substitute to Illustrator. So that was the what was advertised. And I was just I was just amazed. Okay, like why are we killing ourselves drawing these trying to draw these like impossible curves when we have such tool and this scrappy looking software, people who doesn't even know. And you can see this is not the shiny thing that we usually expect from professional software. Why it's not there? What is the whole thing behind that? So then I stumbled upon this. So this is actually these curves are called spiral curves. So it's then I found out, okay, Bezier curves. There's a math behind it. There's a technology behind it. Okay, there's this whole display technologies, all these things behind this, and we are not taught about the tools that we use. It's not in our curriculum, right? And what happens underneath, all these things are not taught. And I stepped and I actually did maths for my A levels, but because I was involved in so many other things at school, being doing extracurricular stuff, I'm smart, but I failed my A levels because I didn't put in the time. Mm, it was a choice. So uh, so then I'm here, and it says building from the source. So there's a PDF, there is a like his PhD, but there's build from source. What the hell is this? And then he's designing fonts with these same curves, and he's a software engineer. So Raf Levine is actually a founding member of the Google uh, web fonts team, as it was called back then, that I got to know later. So I designed this font, and I presented this as the fabulous Typo Day event. I'm going a bit fast here, jumping certain things. So it's blurred out because I don't have any photos from me presenting this. It's good because I was actually bit fat back then. Now I look much better now, I think. So at Typo Day, I presented this typeface, this font. Uh, I designed with this. It was not just the font. I wrote a small paper about it and did a whole presentation. And this was my first sort of international conference, international presentation. This is a Typo Day 2014, and I have to thank Dr. Sumantri Samaravikrama, who is right now the vice chair of ATypi, the International Typography Association. She's a teacher, I think, at Moratuwa University. She was the one who told me about Typo Day and encouraged me to. She was there at the graduation show and encouraged me to this is a good project, go and present it there. So I presented this project, and actually then I received a standing ovation as well. I think I'm still like not over that, because I don't know whether I will be able to do another presentation to get like a big standing ovation again. So I need to figure out something that fascinating to do as well. Because even today, like after 10 years, some of my friends know as the guy who did that hybrid alphabet. So it had that sort of a effect in some people because of the situation in the country and everything. So I presented this there, and actually, even though I used Inkscape to draw my letter forms to make a font out of that, I had to use another tool. So you need a program called Font Editor. So this is a font editor is the tool that you use to, just as you have the JPEG, which is the final product, the output, but then you have the source file, PSD, and you use a PSD editor to edit that. Just like that, the font files have the source files. And the Font Lab Studios was the leading font editing software back then. And of course, I was a design student. I pirated just like everyone else and used a pirated copy, just like I was using Adobe pirated and everything. Though I think the only non-pirated stuff that I had on my computer was Inkscape and other open source tools that I found after that. So I used FontLab Studio 5. We are all. I hope not all of you are familiar with this, but this is what we grew up with. Key generators and cracking softwares and tools. Uh, so, funny thing, after I got my standing ovation, in the audience was Thomas Finney. I actually wanted to put a slide for him. I forgot. He's the current chairman of ATypi, International Typography Association. He was back then. I think he was president of Font Lab Studio, and he came up to me, he spoke to me, he congratulated me, and asked me about the project. And I told him, okay, I use these spiral curves and all this, and I used Font Lab also to make the font. I'm so happy. And he said, okay, cool. But I was like, I can't do this. I pirated your software, so I'm standing next to the people who actually make the software, and he's congratulating me on this project. And I, like, right away, it sort of like broke something in me, because I in on stage I said, this font is licensed under Creative Commons. I want everyone to use this. This is for everyone. I like all this. I had this like grand things, but then I pirated this, and Tom Finney kindly offered me actually sent me like a gratis licenses, two licenses for Font Lab. But then there were more people in the audience. There was Dave Crossland from Google Fonts team was there, Google Web Fonts team, as it was called back then. And they were actually just starting to expand their library into include Indian languages. So this is when 2000, I'm sorry, 2011, 12, 13, 14 was when Google and other big tech companies were realizing, okay, we need to invest in infrastructure in the Indian region and other regions as well. Uh, uh, they were starting to look at seriously about localization, internationalization as well. So with getting involved in FontForge, I also got involved in documentation and other things relating to FontForge software, and it was nice. It was nice to see that we can contribute to these tools. We can report issues. We can get things fixed. My first bug report to a software was to FontForge. They actually, the developers, answered my uh, questions and replied on threads, and responded. And I'm just putting these hashtags. Uh, I got exposed to all these concepts with the exposure to this open source culture. And this is a website. If you're looking up, LibreGraphics meeting, LibreGraphics magazine, maybe you are familiar. If you're interested about learning a bit more on these frontiers, where and communities where the tools that we use in the design processes in center stage, and talking about that, I think you might really be interested looking at these things. So that is basically a sort of a backstory of the open source culture and how I got introduced to that. And sort of second part of the talk, I want to talk about some of the projects and some of the thinking behind the work that I'm doing, sort of relating to the first bit. Uh, do you have any? I can't see the chat. Uh, I can't see my pointer as well.
Yeah,
Is there any questions or like things
I think
until now, or should we?
The only thing I saw on chat, people are just saying really wonderful things and
Okay.
congratulating you and everything. But Karuna said there was a time where you said, "Oh, maybe if you want, I will elaborate on it for one of your
Ah,
during your presentation." And Karuna said, "Yes, please, please share. We want to hear you."
okay. What is okay? Karuna just sent a message about what's that,
Uh,
Kiela? Then I can, yeah.
it
What
was
was it?
about the typeface you made that combined Sinhalese and Tamil.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
lovely, lovely. Okay, uh, we'll circle back to that at the end. Yeah, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
just show some stuff. But I didn't want to go into that because there's a recorded like a nice 20 minute like a proper presentation on YouTube. I'll just drop that link because it covers like the thinking, the history of the conflict and everything. So yeah, and I can share like the whole project, like the source files and everything like open source and available, so I'll just share those links as well. Yeah.
Mm,
uh,
perfect.
okay, let me quickly just adjust this okay. Okay, so I just wanted to like put this here and just since we're talking about typography, my sort of definition, the what I subscribe to as or understand is the visual component of typography is the visual component of the written word, and this is actually from Matthew Butterick. There's this fantastic web book called the Butterick's Practical Typography. I recommend it to anybody. Matthew Buttrick is this US based lawyer who is also a typographer, type designer, and he's actually right now leading one of the big lawsuits against not against like about training AI models with open source code. So he's a open source champion, and I really loved his very simple but broad definition. Typography is visual component of the written word. It encapsulates everything that I understand it as. And this is a little chart that I've come to uh, show, and when I'm talking about typography to use. So we have language on in one side, and we have letter forms. When I'm talking about letter forms, I'm not necessarily talking about just a font, but the how these letter forms are. It could be a collection of letter forms. It could be a word. It could be a bunch of paragraphs. But these two things made up the written word, and uh, fonts sit in the middle with working with culture, technology, linguistics, and it sits in this intersection space. And in font making and fonts also, you might have various levels of expertise, but you become absolute expert in something in a specific script. So for example, even though Nipuni introduced me as I specialize in Indian scripts as well, I'm right now, I limit my expertise to Sinhala script and the Maldivian script, because even though I understand other scripts and cultures as well, sometimes I might not have the full expertise in the technology behind that, the Unicode, how to encode that different technologies. So this is a little chart that I want to show to. make you kind of understand how my expertise sort of developed over time. So again, continuing with the previous story, in 2014-15 was when these sort of things were happening in India, and this is when my teaching and sharing knowledge sort of chapter started. After my work, after I presented my project, because the Google was picking up a lot of projects in the region, font projects, Google Fonts team was commissioning likes of you guys familiar with Type, Nupur, and the great work Sarang, Nupur, and the Akshara guys are doing. So Dave Crossland from Google Fonts team was the main consultant, and I was actually hired as a assistant consultant to work with him in we work with the Google Fonts team on the Indian language font projects. And I had the opportunity to travel around India, doing workshops, talking to, can you guys spot me in this photo? So I had this, this was in Telangana. So we met a lot of these organizations trying to switch to Unicode, develop web fonts from the old ASCII-like encodings. Are we all familiar about like the old encoded, like ASCII encoded fonts and Unicode fonts? I suppose we can okay, quick aside. I'll just do that and go so you learn something new as well. Unicode is the international standard to encode all of the human sort of languages and scripts. So it's a big chart which assign a unique number to each character of each script. So for example, Sinhala A has a specific character. Tamil Avanna Ana has a specific character of its own. But this was introduced only later in 70s, later in 80s, late 80s. Until then, there was no international standard to make fonts and store data. So before Unicode came to be, we had 8-bit fonts where these fonts can only store 256 characters. So those 256 characters were reserved. This standard word was called ASCII, American Standard for Information Interchange, and then based on that standard, the Indian government, for example, introduced Indian ASCII, I think, something like that. So what happened was, in the place of where the letter A would be on a font, you would just have the image of the Sinhala A or the image of the Tamil A, but the computer cannot actually read it. So a lot of the publishing industry, graphic designers still in India, still in Sri Lanka, are actually using these old standard fonts because companies like Adobe and other desktop publishing companies, for example, InDesign only started supporting Indian languages and Sinhala and other Indian languages. Uh, Later in 2020 was the time when they actually shipped proper support for these scripts. Until that time, the publishing industry was using hacked things or old fonts. Just aside, I can talk about that if you're interested in about that. If we might have some time later. But again, back to the story. So we were doing this is, I think, in Srishti in Bangalore. Yes. So we did a bunch of workshops to both students and also to web designers, developers, introducing web fonts, introducing them to the latest font technologies. And we had did type design courses as well. So this is a type design workshop called a crafting type. It's a 3-day intensive type design focused workshops, and this learning type design, learning how type is made, learning how fonts is made, I think is the best way to improve your typography game. Because as type designers, as font designers, we spend a lot of time thinking about restrictions of environments, what are the requirements of fonts, and how these things are being used. So this 3-day crafting type workshop has a really nice method of introducing you to basics of type design, and what is at the end of the 3 days you actually have a working typeface. And this workshop is using FontForge and other open source tools, so the barrier to entry is very low, and you don't have to buy licenses and spend a lot of money on something. Mm, Uh, yeah. So at during this period, I was also involved and developed Sinhala, a bunch of Sinhala typefaces for Google. So if you go to Google Fonts and look at search up Sinhala typefaces, almost all the typefaces that are from the Muniac. Muniac is the type design studio we run here. I think I saw Kosal also joining in the call. I think Kosal is one of the co-founders and another type designer at Muniac. And then in 2015, I joined the MA program, MA typeface design at University of Reading. Uh, Sometimes, people read this as typeface design at Reading University, think it as a, a scam. No, it's not a scam. It's a real thing. It's a University of Reading MA typeface design. And yeah, so this chart, I mastered this chart in a way, but I realized the importance of understanding typography in placing typography in humanities, because at Reading University, the typography department is actually in the humanities department. So there is this heavy focus on the cultural, the social aspects, and this is the uh, final thesis project that I developed there. So for almost 8 months, you spend your time researching and developing a typeface. Actually, Zen was with me in the same batch at Reading. Uh, uh, yeah. So and this is some of the outcomes of the research project, because just like for example, we have for Latin script, we have these rich ligatures and standards, developed vocabularies, right? So the MA program allowed me to look at all the resources and develop alternates, drawing from archives, looking at archives, and bringing back some of those characters back into the typefaces. Um, and this is the title of the thesis which I did there. Uh, this is actually when I started being a bit more interested in the historical context of Sinhala type and where these things come from. And it was really interesting to see and look at the histories of type and typography in our region. And for example, all of the Indian languages, most of the South Indian and North Indian languages and scripts actually the typefaces were developed by the Serampur or Sri Rampur mission in the 1890s by the British missionaries. And the funny thing is, some of the villains of the Sri Lankan sort of national history missionaries who were the people who pioneered the basic shapes of Sinhala typography. And these particular two examples are one of my really favorite examples, because on the left you can see the first ever sample from the first ever book printed by the Dutch colonizers in the 17th century, uh, and sorry, 18th century. And on the right, you can see a book printed by the British missionaries in the mid 19th century, mid yes, mid 19th century. So, and do you see the small sort of black mark on the left? Yes. Uh, so this is the Sinhala traditional punctuation mark. It's called Kundalia, and eh, there was this interesting fact that this mark was, these both of these documents are Bibles, the Old Testament and the New Testament. So this text hasn't been, there was no pre-existing Sinhala text like this. This was for the first time Sinhala was in Ola leaves, and for the first time it was being printed on these papers. And while the Dutch colonizers thought and they wanted to include the Sinhala traditional punctuation mark, the British missionaries like right away dropped the the traditional Sinhala uh, punctuation mark and introduced Latin punctuation marks. And you can also see the British in this particular publication on the right actually using the Sinhala traditional numerals, but by the the 1830s, actually British completely retired the Sinhala numeral system. Uh, so right now the Sinhala numeral system is non-existent. Like we were not, it exists. It was encoded to Unicode, but it's archaic. Nobody uses it. It's not taught in schools. It's just preserved. But I think this didn't happen for some Indian scripts. I think Kannada and like some other languages. If you travel around India, you can still see even phone numbers being shown in the traditional numerals, but that's not the case. And it's purely because of the missionaries, decided, okay, no, 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 it's just too complicated to use these traditional numerals. You just use the Latin one. So at one point they just decided and went with it. So what are the implications of these things that could have for generations? Yeah. Um, so all these things, one of the things, like the main learnings from my MA is making informed decisions in less time. That's what I learned in the MA, and I think that's uh, what we all need to do in any sort of education. Now when I think about reflect on everything, I think the MA program was really impactful with other things as well, because like when you sit in front of the computer to draw a typeface, you have, on the Cartesian space, you just have infinite options, right? I can move these pointers to anywhere in any direction. and retain the shape of the letter, but how do I make the decision to stop now and move on to the next letter? So that is what I learned, and this is a bit of geeking out, but if you can see this chart sort of shows the amount of work done in each month. I generated this from the data generated from the saved files. Whenever I hit save, it would record I made a system to record the number of saves and which files I actually worked on. So at the program, we started with the on top working on the Latin regular style, and in intervals we would work. And on the bottom you can see in yellow where the workshops would happen, and you can see the amount of work being done. And towards the end you can see there's a lot of uh, commits, a lot of saves. Okay, you can argue that I wasn't doing much work and I was just rushing towards the deadline, just like most of us. No. It was not just that. It's the number of saves, right? So number of saves means that you are confident about your work and you're just saving and moving on to the whatever the next action. So this is sort of that. So just the main out sort of insight from this for me is just uh, making if we can empower students or people, anybody, to make informed decision in less time and less effort and less resources. That's maybe not necessarily resources, but that's a point of education. So I'm just going to uh, run through few things. I'm going to skip a few things just to save some time, and then I'll just open the floor for questions and go with that. So getting back from the MA in uh, after getting back to Sri Lanka with Kosala and a few others, a bunch of friends over here, because during all this time we were developing Sinhala web fonts, and we built a community here of linguists, people who contributed knowledge, people who contributed their time around our studio. And in 2018, we actually got together and wrote this manifesto and set up a small community uh, to talk about fonts, talk about type, talk about language. So Akuru is the Sinhala word for letter, letter form. Uh, it's a word. So we set up this collective. Uh, it's a very loose collective. So this is a small video from the first event that happened. That's Dr. Sumantri Samaravikrama. She holds a PhD in Sinhala typography at Morato University. So so um, and with the collective in 2019, with the support of the Dutch embassy here, the embassy of Netherlands in Sri Lanka, we organized a big conference with the same community. You can see this is we had a all leaf manuscript writing workshop, a calligraphy workshop. Oh, actually the video started halfway through. Oh, let me. Hmm. Oh, I have made a mistake there. Let me show you the video from the beginning. Yes, it's a short video. Are you guys getting the audio as well from the video?
No, Pathum, we can't hear the audio. I think you have to, when you share your screen, you have to say share audio. But it's okay if you don't want to do that. We can,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it was the whole program was funded by the Dutch embassy here, and it was a 5 day, like a week-long program where we brought down a Dutch typeface designer, Martin Mahur, to Sri Lanka, and uh, we had these 5 days of programs, and we made the program in a way that we get the most uh, amount of time for the resource person to actually move with the community. So this day 3 program specifically, we brought students from 3 design schools, the Morotua Design School and like other 3 design schools, to actually attend this type design workshop with him. So one of the things that I've been really interested in uh, doing is figuring out how we can, because Sri Lanka is an island nation, there is not much traffic happening to Sri Lanka sometimes, even with these things. And for someone, for a design student in Sri Lanka, for example, a young design student, even to go to a conference like Design Yatra is really expensive. Getting there, doing that is impossible. And getting a visa for a conference in Europe is, virtually like not it's practically impossible, right? So how can we do events and organize things here where we can bring resource people here, where we can expose students to possibilities? Because as you can see, like, milestones in my career has been meeting people, conferences, meeting people, moving with them, getting inspired. So you can see all of this program was meant to get people moving together and exposed to the resource person the most. So we had multiple days of programs where the most active members of the community, the bright, sometimes bright stars, got like one-on-one time with the white smaller workshops, and then the wider community going into the second day. So this was the day of the conference. uh, and we had Martin Mayur, one of the well-known, celebrated type designer, presenting on stage, and next to him, our resource people and local researchers presenting next to them, and see the sponsors. Because it's important that when we are in this region, when we are underfunded in certain areas, you need to find ways and partners to get these sort of projects going, because even the design schools do not have the necessary resources uh, to actually invest in these things. And the other biggest project of 30 days of Akuru is, you guys are familiar with 30 days of type, I think. Yes, 30 days of type, the international thing you have seen. Okay, so we have 30 days of Akuru. I'm not doing justice to everyone if I just put like 3 or 4 of these things. We have been running this for 6 years now. The 30 days of Akuru. I want you guys to go and check out the Instagram page. It's fabulous work over 6. If you search on Instagram for the tag, uh, the hashtag 30 days of Akura, I think there's about like 6,000 like plus entries right now there, and it will happen this year as well. And the 30 days of Akura was founded by Vihanga and Chamodi, and they actually decided that they're going to do that during the conference I showed you, the video I showed you of the conference. So they actually decided during that. So these are the things that sort of translate into other things and inspire people. And right now, a lot of people who founded Akuru Collective have moved on to do bigger things. uh, yes, I think I just have the last bit of my presentation, and we'll just open up. So, teaching typography at undergraduate level. So I've had the opportunity to teach at Moratuwa University and Academy of Design uh, to the undergrad students. But also at the same time, I've been doing training programs for industries, doing crafting type workshops here and there, and knowledge sharing, sometimes doing consultancy or training workshops for typesetting people in different departments. But teaching undergraduate level has been always a challenging thing for me, because sometimes uh, uh, I don't know, like sometimes, one of the project coordinators told me that I respect the students too much. I as in, like, I expect them to be in a level higher than they actually are, or higher than they are committed. But like, this is an image maybe like a lot of you have seen. And sometimes, typography 101, the class starts with this. I think this is the most useless place and the useless thing to actually do or start or talk about type. It's just and this is very Western way of, like, dissecting things and pointing and doing this. Okay, this is very useful. It's very useful to have words for things, to point at things and talk about the things. That is the more, that is very important. And when we are talking about, when we have come to this AI age, pointing at things and talking about them, understanding them, is, I think, one of the most valuable skills. But this doesn't help, because the skill to point at something and exactly describe that comes after you go through lot of things. If you just give them this, you're just limiting them, and you're just putting them in the same mold of, the prescribed education system, not education, the schooling system. This is, I think, schooling, not education. If you want to school your kids about typography, this is what you do. So I've negotiated a thing with both these design schools, where I'm not going to do modules, because uh, it's a big bit of a commitment as well. You need to actually commit to do a module. But workshops are fine. You can just go spoil them and come back, I suppose. So how do you talk about all these things: calligraphy, lettering, writing, drawing, fonts, typography? You need to talk about all these things, and you can't be just talking about typography. And if you just have like smaller time, and if you're teaching undergraduate level kids, introducing typography, how do you do this? And I just want to show you like just two exercises that developed with a lot of inspiration from others, looking at what others are doing. uh, uh, this text, observe me, shouldn't be there. It's a mistake. So this activity is called show me the meaning. So basically, I give the students this text on the bottom. It's a extracted plain text from the Gazette, and just ask them to put it in the word processor. You can't use a graphic design software. Use either Microsoft Word, LibreOffice, or Google Sheets, or even like a text editor. And I just show them this example. Okay, this is a plain text file, and I think only Nipuni and me here probably speak Sinhala. But if we try to understand meaning, give this text a meaning, just do typography to this, right? So you have this text, just do some typography for me. So this is what you do. Yes. and then you put a typeface and you have meaning. So this is where we bring that visual component into life. And the second exercise is called what the document. And there I encourage and I introduce them to this idea of, this is again an idea that comes from University of Reading, sort of school, not the School of Reading, but University of Reading sort of introduced. Jerry Leonidas has been talking about a lot. Everything is a document, and understanding everything as a document help us to a billboard is a document, a signage is a document. If you from a typographer's perspective, typographic perspective, everything is a document. If you start thinking in terms of everything is a document, what can you get there? How can you observe these things and almost reverse engineer the things? So I have this big collection of old books and posters and things I've collected over the years. I have some Kannada newspapers, postcards, all these things. And I would divide the students and just give them this exercise where they have to try and make these observations, write them down, and try to understand how it was made. So I really liked this quote about, like, teach as you learn, not as you were taught. And so this whole exercise about the document relates to the next beat, uh, because when we understand documents, everything that we do as documents, you can actually liberate from the tools that we use. And I try to leave the students with this idea of everything that we do is made up of, as designers, is made up of content, uh, structure, and style. And separating those things and then working with them help us. So content is text and media, the structure is a markup, and a hierarchy. Style is a aesthetic. And this idea is heavily coming from HTML, CSS, how web works. You have your markup, you have your text, and you have a separate style sheet. And finally, the very final bit is, I this is an idea that I've been developing and thinking about a lot. Fonts, understanding fonts as infrastructure, and understanding typography as infrastructure, and understanding also the design tools and design as infrastructure. Uh, so I would like to stop here because I have some more slides, but I think this is a rundown of a lot of things that I've been doing. But I think, Nipuni, I made it into something cohesive. Yes, I suppose.
Yes, thank you, Pathum. It was, I mean, I've known you for a long while, but I learned a lot of new things of your work and also about typography in general. So, Archana, do you want to add anything?
Oh, this was really an eye-opening for us. Pathum, you were talking about being in Srishti. I'm originally from Mysuru, in Karnataka, and then you were talking about Kannada, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to be your student and take a class. If we can do some kind of a workshop for Sadea, or we are also thinking about maybe in the future have a residency program for Sadea.
Yeah.
Maybe you are the go-to person so that we can collaborate. Maybe we are going to talk more with you, Pathum, and see how we can build a relationship and bring some of the folks from here to do something. It was just fabulous. We really appreciate your generosity. And then all of the stories that you were telling, and then how, thank you for sharing the challenges, the stories, and why you did what you did, right? So everything had a deeper meaning. And then your experimentation in terms of hybrid letter forms, which I myself am experimenting as well with Kannada, English, and then my understanding of Hindi is very limited. But then I'm trying to bring them together and see where I can experiment. But I would love if anybody has any questions for Pathum to share and ask at this time, or even comments.
This is less of a question, more just, I mean, I'm really grateful that I was able to attend today because I think as an like I'm Indian and so I identify as South Asian, but my knowledge outside of India is frankly so limited. And so I'm so grateful to be able to see your lived experiences. And for example, I had no idea the Kundalia punctuation was a thing. And that's the kind of thing where you can't just kind of look it up. You don't know what to look for when you're looking for things like that. Like, I'm not gonna wake up one day and be like, I wonder what punctuation marks are like in, other scripts. And so just learning about that alone has just like opened my mind so much about, oh yeah, punctuation's a whole other territory that we've been so confined to, like within Latin. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you because, I mean, if not for this, I wouldn't have learned about that. So yeah, thank you. And same as Arjuna, when I was listening to you talk, I was like, man, I wish he was my professor.
Thank you. That's lovely. That's very kind of you. Yeah. Um. Yes, and I sent you the link to the talk. I think it's much more concise. But that's me like 10 years ago. But I don't think much has changed in terms of like my beliefs or what it means. Um, and yes, I think the importance is that like people like me, born in 90s, like uh, getting out of the region, learning things and maybe like coming back and also exploring things. One of the pointers that I couldn't actually make is, some of the documents, like the old documents that I showed you, I could only access them in the British Library because I was there physically. Right. And for example, there's a lot of history of Sinhala typography that happened in 80s 90s in the monotype archives in Salford. So you need to go there, and unless you go there, there's no uh, way of getting that. uh, so there's this whole problem with mobility that affects a lot, and that is also something. Yeah, and yes, Muhammad said schooling and getting education are not the same. Exactly. So I think we need to sort of like dismantle like design schools. Is design schooling is yeah, but we need to get yes, yes. Brian says he has a question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi, Pathum.
yes,
Thank
can.
you.
Yeah,
Very enlightening session. Thank you very much. So, as a person
thank.
who kind of knows both Tamil and Sinhala, who use it every day, to see those, two languages like merge together is like a, a very nice thing to see. My question,
Cool,
I don't
man.
know if it's relevant to this particular topic, but something I've been thinking for the past couple of, days. So, the world is a big place, a lot of professions, a lot of people doing a lot of things. So, in that context, how do you think a design or typography, how do you think it's, important to the world? It's a bit of a heavy question, sorry, but, just like to get
Sorry,
your
can you
perspective.
repeat? Can you repeat, please? The last bit
Yeah,
I
I would like
dropped.
to, yeah, can hear.
Yes, yes, can hear now.
Okay. So I would like to get your opinion on how design and typography, serves the world, as a bigger purpose.
Okay, I think
Bit of a heavy question, I understand.
yeah, okay, so typography and fonts. So fonts are the primary component that enables digital communication and encoding information and communicating clearly things. So human knowledge, the first, when, the civilization changed when Gutenberg printed the first book, because it gives us this the ability of scaling uh, uh, the knowledge, right? Earlier it was, you had to, before Gutenberg invented printing and typography and, modern sort of design as a profession and a kind, I think, started, graphic design started off typography. If we go back in all these design professions, we can sort of, architecture is there on in one stream, I suppose, but definitely a lot of design professions, animation, graphic and motion, UX. When I graduated, our program was called graphic design, but now the same program is called visual communication design, because when UX and all these things popped up, the design education business had to rename it in a way that encapsulates everything and build it into a program that everyone can do. But if you go back some years, you go back to typography, and typography serves people because it allows uh, storing information, encoding information, storing information, and communicating those information clearly. And information is anything, ideas, anything as such, right? And that is power. Like, for example, in Sri Lanka, the some of the examples I showed you, by 18 until 1860s, until late 18th century, only the British missionaries had the printing powers. And 1860s, 70s, that was when the some of the Buddhist activists also got hold of printing, and that's when uh, uh, there was a Buddhist revival, and that led to a lot of other things. So if you look at the change of developments in typography is completely tied to developments in technology. It's you can't divide like typography from computers and design. Like, usually the changes in whatever the changes will happen in design is first manifested or seen in areas of typography and typesetting, because it is the primary component of visual design. For example, from letterpress design to letterpress to other technologies. When photo typesetting happened, it was the first thing that came to being was the photo typesetting. Then only the whole industry changed into light based graphic design systems. If you're interested about these things, there's this fabulous documentary called Graphic Means. I highly recommend that for any design educator to actually show it to uh, your students. But the purpose of design, maybe Nipuni can better articulate how design can help world. I think I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you
I
very much,
I don't know
Pathum.
whether that answers. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. Because earlier you mentioned that when students drop out of school, they either go to advertising and do packaging design and stuff like that. That's what I'm doing now. So I'm in advertising. So
Okay.
so what you're
Okay.
saying
I
about
have a. Uh,
yeah. So now digital has come in. So a lot of digital artworks, design stuff is happening. So what you're saying about typography and the whole world of typography, it's like really enlightening the way how you put it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind words. It's
Yeah.
I think how design affects the world, I think it's a big question, and I think all of us are, finding our own little answers, Brian,
Yes, I know,
as
I know.
as we go.
Because
into
there are, from a South Asian context, we are told to be like doctors or engineers or whatever, like
yes,
these professions. But when you say
yeah,
I'm a designer, it's kind of how frowned upon. Like, okay, what do you do? Like designing, like is it a viable career path? That sort of thing. So that's why this
yes,
whole kind of how it serves in a bigger purpose kind of question comes into your head. That's why I asked the question.
yeah, for
yeah.
sure. And I think,
I,
yeah, Pathum, I
yeah,
think you touched a good point there. And I also noted it down in my notes is that, and Brian, like you said, in a South Asian context, it's kind of unusual to be a designer. And I know in Sadea we have these conversations about designers and educators like mental health and confidence and things like that. I think it affects us in a deeper level than we sometimes, are aware of or care to admit that we've I don't think anybody here has had like a very straight sort of, hey, I'm doing my like high school or advanced levels examinations and I decide I'm going to be a designer. I think that has maybe happened for a couple of people, but I think it's very rare because it's always like design is, I feel, something you stumble upon or like you fail at something first and then try this out and then figure out, hey, I can do this. So yeah, I think that's and it's very true in a South Asian context where there's this sort of traditional professions are valued more. And I just want to tell you, Brian, that we have all been there, and I think we are all maybe still there, where we are trying to find confidence in ourselves. So yeah.
One thing I must say that there are so many design schools mushrooming in India. Really,
Mm-hmm.
they're just coming up everywhere. People are talking about design everywhere. In IIT Delhi, just had a conference about futuring design education in India. So people are really realizing and then going back to their native roots and vernacularism, which was not as much encouraged many, many years ago. When I first started writing my thesis in 2007 and 8, so that time, people were really not talking about vernacularism. People were still kind of looking at whatever the West was doing, and international type design was it. And then the Bauhaus school, whatever language they had left, and that's what we were looking at back home in India, I believe. But then but now I see how people are discussing and talking, and it's really wonderful. And I'm learning a lot when I conduct workshops, when they invite me to do a workshop in back home in India. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing that people are discussing. But one thing I learned that in IIT Mumbai, Professor Sri Kumar was telling me that they had always been doing. So again, people are like, it's very different in certain areas and certain regions. But it's amazing how things are changing for the better, right? So, and when Pathum, when you said, how do we decolonize our, typography and then bring in our own idea, our own understanding, our own histories into the broader landscape, I think that's when we are moving a little bit, right? We are trying to move.
yeah. Yeah, so I think like we are all like smart enough to like extrapolate some ideas from, I didn't want to put like the exact sort of insights in this, but there are like things that intersect, especially the design business, how design business and especially design education business, for example, this accreditation that happens here and there, that comes with the responsibilities to deliver like a certain curricula, and then the local tutors are not given enough space to integrate and develop curricula and do that. And then the problem with tools is, I highly encourage you guys to check out Librographics universe. There is a whole community of people really critically thinking about the how the tools that we use affect the way we think about design. And there is a certain power that you feel when you actually own and you can contribute to design. There was this fabulous project once uh, called one of these artists doing glitch art. There's a open source raster editor program called GIMP. I don't know whether you guys have heard GIMP. GIMP. It's a very advanced. You can use it as a replacement for Photoshop. Not necessarily replacement. A lot of bells and whistles of Photoshop is not there. But if freedom is a feature that you're looking for, GIMP has that. So what this glitch artist did is, changed few things in the source code of the software and compiled it. So it doesn't matter what artwork you open with it, it just creates glitch art. And that to me is, taking control of the tools. And especially, these conversations about tools are very important now because of the AI tools that yeah, because yeah we are faced with, and we actually deeply have to think about AI tools and how to integrate them. And if you step into the Librographics world and look around, there's a lot of literature about how we can approach this.
I have a dumb question. Can I ask that? As Pathum is there.
uh, yes, yeah, of course.
So you think I was trying to write, but I don't know whether it is a good question or not. So do you think like typeface design or this kind of industry, it has is there any downside of this? For example, do you think literacy is prerequisite for typeface design? Like how about illiterate people in this world?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, I think literate people without critical thinking is the worst. And I think like Sri Lanka, for example, is in a worse place because, we have one of the highest literacy rates in the region, like 98%. Uh, but, yeah, I think like our population, there's a lot of people, I don't want to say dumb, but just no critical thinking. So just to take the example, you have a person who can read everything, but no critical thinking. So whatever that comes to his feed, or whatever his dumb uncle or some auntie sends to WhatsApp, he's just going to consume it and just believe it. So that's a problem. Yes, of course. Yeah, but that's not a problem with the like typeface design necessarily. That's a problem with our schooling. So schooling makes dumb people without critical thinking because to be honest, like the schooling system that we have, which was modeled in the 19th century to like mold people into the normal industrial sort of take you need like replicatable, replaceable people that you can put in the production chain. People who would work on time. When the bell is rang, they stop, close the books and go to do the next thing without asking questions. They listen to the person in front of the room and only ask questions if you are asked to. So it's not a problem with typefaces or typeface design. Um, but sometimes I wonder the value of type design, and the time and energy we put into it with everything that's happening in countries like us with economy broken and everything. I find it very hard to articulate value of type design, or value of another singular typeface when people are starving. But yes, definitely, uh, uh,
No, what,
literate
Pathum, what
dumb
else?
people is a curse.
No, what I was trying to say, thank you for saying that. What I was trying to say is, for example, in architecture, we call it like universally accessible building. Can we say like universally accessible typeface? Or is it like too far away from now? Because I was trying to say, like, if somebody is literate, if there is a literacy, somebody can read, however that design is. I mean, I'm not talking about the criticality. I'm just talking about like literacy. I can read this in any known language. But how, in this era of like technology, how people are thinking about like, it's not just for the people who are from Sri Lanka and know that language, but it can be transformed into something else, like more malleable, something close. Like, for example, if it's the same root, it will be like, Singhali language and the root, whatever the other roots are in a script can be manipulated so that I can also read, or I can use other senses. It's not just like just eyes and reading something. I'm just making it more preposterous kind of a question, that why are we just thinking of people who can read and making typeface designs for them? Is it inclusive at all?
Okay. Yes. Typefaces. Okay. So
Because
typefaces
sometimes we
are
say like in architecture that architecture is for like elite or like expensive, or there's a class system, right? So is it like typeface is always like, I mean, also like that? So it's not for everybody, like whoever can, if you
Yeah.
have a,
Okay. So people who cannot understand. Or okay. So legibility is one thing, right? Like that's just understanding and differentiating between different shapes, and literacy is not the same as that.
no.
But typefaces are not for people who cannot read. It's not meant for that. It's a different audience. So if we have people who cannot read, it's not a it's not a problem. Then if then we are, of course, like we can go with other sensors, colors. So for example, that's why we have braille, right? So that's a sensory based reading thing. uh, so then we have other interfaces, for example, for blind people and visually impaired, there's sensors that you can put into the tongue, and then it actually gives them
Mhm,
vision.
mhm,
There's those kind of situations. So braille is the simplest example that I can give you. Of course, like using different sensors, and like BCI, the brain computer interfaces have made like real progress in the last 2 years or so. So I think last year, April last year, so they jumped from 4 words a minute to 26 words a minute or something. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's a like the order of three magnitude. Like it was
mm,
just per words a minute. BCI, brain computer interface. So you think and the computer just types the word. Earlier it was 4 words. Now it's up to 26 words or something. So it will just get there like real quick, like very quick. Right now there's projects on GitHub where, like, with EEG, the headset, like a portable EEG headset, you can input to the music system and it will just like spit things out. So I think, like, I give my job like maximum like 5 more years. Like
mhm.
probably maybe 10 if we are lucky. But like, I have a niche market, it's a very small market, and I'm okay. But I yeah, it's yeah, it's a very interesting time. But yeah, I think a lot of these things that we are talking about in 5 years, if we, all of us can get together, these things will a lot of uh, difference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, Brian, yes, Karuna.
oh, sorry. I wanted to add that, there is like the discipline of type design where there's craftsmanship informing the letter forms, but then there's also a whole other area of study on scripts themselves and like trying to come up with scripts that are more intuitive to learn. And that's, I think, where the combating illiteracy comes in, where, I mean, it is kind
Yeah,
of impractical to expect like a whole rehash of an entire script that we've been using for centuries, but there have been a lot of experiments with like in Latin, specifically with English, something that's more intuitive with the phonemes of how we speak, and it makes more sense to spell a certain way when we reconfigure some alphabets. So that's like a whole other study, and I had to jump in and say that because linguistics is like my other rabbit hole that I go on all the time.
ah,
So
lovely. Lovely.
yeah.
Yes. I mean, like this Esperanto is there, right? Esperanto, the language is something that was constructed language, which is said to be like actually very easy to learn. I haven't been familiar, and there's a lot of constructed scripts and conlangs and conscripts, like a real thing. Yes, thanks, Karna. That's great.
Yeah, I think Mohammed, just if we really look back, literacy is also kind of elite, right? In the if you look at the history of it, because it was taught to like sort of the elite in society, and maybe in Sri Lanka to the monks, in that kind of schooling system they had. And I don't think what we refer to as the common people had access to these this type of like literacy before the missionary school system came in. So it's and I think it's a very interesting sort of this kind of almost push and pull. And I know in Sadea we talk about we want to open these conversations around design decolonization. And then there's also, I increasingly feel that we cannot, I mean, when first design decolonization came into like my purview, I was like, oh my gosh, like colonization was this like bad thing that happened. And I was really like very I had very strong opinions. But then you really look at it, and it's a gray area also, because our current reality is shaped by that history, and we cannot decouple ourselves from it. We are talking in English with each other right now because of that colonization that happened in our region, right? So we are a product of that history in some sense. But then how can we work to make it more inclusive is the question, I think. And just sort of piggybacking on Karuna's comment, I have also seen fonts in the realm of making it easy for people with like learning difficulties, like dyslexia. I forget the name of the designer, but she was working on a font that when you click on a character, it turns into a pictogram
It's
of a
It's
word.
C type, Renee Sewell.
Yes.
Yeah.
I listened to one of her presentations, and I thought that was like, like a very eye-opening kind of project. So yeah, I think we have these histories, but this, and if you really look at it, this whole idea of inclusivity and universal accessibility to things for all humans is also new, right? It's new, and it's the ideal that we are going towards now. It wasn't an ideal like 100 years before. So I
And
think
yes, I like.
yeah.
I just have to add to that, just about like universal accessibility. I was actually talking to Madhubasha, one of our mutual friends, an architect, about universal accessibility. Like in Sri. Oh, so this is the thing, right? So we have like right now we can see a lot of places in Sri Lanka also like have like wheelchair access and everything. but Madhubaj was saying that, it's a lot of, it's a lot more expensive to build this throughout a building and introduce that. And I was, just thinking about this. In Sri Lanka, if someone doesn't, comes in the wheelchair, like people would, just get together and carry the wheelchair up the stairs. That is our culture, right?
Mhm,
We
mhm.
are fine with that. But maybe these ideas are invented in places where that is not necessarily the culture is. Maybe I'm just like putting it out there to like for us to think sometimes about the costs incurred with all of these as well. But yeah, I just wanted to
No, like cheaper alternatives are coming as well
yeah,
for
yeah,
architecture as
yeah,
well. Like it's not like you have to have a ramp, but there can be a
yes, yes,
mechanical system as well. So I'm
yeah,
just saying, like in design, it is not very new, but in architecture, it's not very
mm,
new. But
mm.
in typeface design, it's a little newer. It's like still not a lot of people working on this. I mean,
Yeah,
I know Renee because she's
the
my colleague and she always talks
yeah,
about it. And I see her every day,
yeah,
but not a
yeah,
lot of people actually took that to that extent.
yeah.
And she's working with
The
other languages now.
mm, yeah, so there has been efforts in, yes, yes. I'm not familiar with her work. I'll actually like look at it, but accessibility wise for smaller sizes, for there has been work since where like increased legibility in smaller sizes has been a big interest of the designers for the longest time. Let's give me one moment. I'll join in.
Um,
Sorry.
yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. uh, uh, that's a thing, but the this sort of idea of uh, pictographic base, and for how do we get knowledge to people who don't read, and this is not necessarily even about people who can't read. There are people who actually are not readers, right? There are
Yeah,
people
yeah,
like
sure.
primarily who, I have like a lot of friends who just cannot like sit and read. They will
Right.
hardly read an email. So it's, I think, about like yes, yes, but
Because I'm
it's a interesting.
I was interested because I work with signage system like storefront signs
Ah,
and everything like urban letter forms. So I was thinking like if somebody in Dhaka in Bangladesh, I'm from Bangladesh, or somebody in India or Sri Lanka, I'm sure it's like saturated with like signboards, hoarding and everything. Every single thing is a letter, I mean legible thing, right? Whether it's good or bad or whatever. Think about a person who cannot read that. Just think about the experience of a city when somebody is illiterate. That's
mm,
outstanding, right? Because I can read it. I can read English, a little bit of Hindi, Bangla, everything. But if somebody can't read anything, of course, it's not his fault or anything I'm saying, but I'm saying it's a very different experience altogether. And typeface design or technology is not yet there to help that, in a way. That's what I was trying. I mean, it's just a
yeah,
antidote.
yeah, yes,
Well, thank you for this amazing discussion. We really are grateful, seriously. But our presentations run for an hour and at the most an hour and a half. But this was long and great discussion we had, and it went in so many different trajectories. I think it was really important for us to kind of chat. But Pathum, please don't be a stranger for us. We will hopefully meet at a different time, just have a chat and see how we can collaborate
yes.
and then work and do things together as the organization or even as individual designers. But we really thank you so much. And Nipuni, thank you so much for introducing us to Pathum. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known anything. I mean, for us, it was such an eye opener because we don't know much about Sri Lankan design, what's happening there, and what about typography and everything else. So we really appreciate you and appreciate everyone for joining us this afternoon. You all have an amazing afternoon, and good night, Pathum. Again, it's late night for you, but you're here. Appreciate again. So
Oh, you're joining from Sri Lanka.
yeah, he's joining from Sri Lanka.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Okay. Thank you so much for everyone and the great work that you do, and thanks Hipuni for introducing me. And yeah, I'm looking forward. It's been a passion of mine. I've like organized. I didn't. I skipped through that slide. Actually, I've organized here like a design educators forum twice. I think Nipuni has spoken about it. So definitely, I'm interested about working. And if any of you need any, like help with curriculum and like anything, like I'm like really happy to help in that area. That's like a passion side thing for me. Okay. Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. See you
Thank you all.
soon. Bye.
Bye.
Yes, bye.